Hi, everyone. Happy Friday to you all, and welcome to the latest edition of Maria and Fernando Talking Jersey. I am New Jersey's premier journalist and top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine, Fernando Uribe. My partner in crime will be with us in just a moment. Again, folks, StreamYard, like Zoom, like anything, when you're streaming, can run into some technical difficulties, but don't you worry. The other half of the political dream team of commentary here in the state of New Jersey will join us shortly, so don't sweat it. Certainly, again, make sure that you share this episode as we are streaming live right now on StreamYard and also on Facebook. And, of course, I want to thank you all for joining us here on a Friday here to start off the month of June. And without question, a lot to talk about as it is primary weekend. And I am sort of allotting a couple minutes here for my amazing broadcast partner, former state assemblywoman, and of course, New Jersey's premier advocate, Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, to join us in just a moment. Again, hopefully you're all safe. I know it's kind of like a torrential downpour here in all of New Jersey. And of course, we appreciate you tuning in here tonight. Of course, hey, the show can't be complete without my broadcast partner, again, New Jersey's premier advocate, Maria Rodriguez-Gregg. What's going on, partner?
Not much. Had a little power issue for a minute there. There's a nice downpour here as well. And there's lots of trees where I live in Medford. And, you know, it looks like one hit a line, but good to go.
No, I feel you. And it's great to obviously have you here with me today, obviously. And folks, if you have not checked out Talking Jersey on the YouTube page, please do so. Some great feedback that we've both received. And obviously, nobody is doing a show like this. And of course, Maria and Fernando continue to sort of break the mold, and we're still the most must-see political streaming show on a regular basis here in the state of New Jersey. Of course, in addition to my own Real Talk, which you can see behind me, which you can check out on Monday nights live via eisenandj.org, and also, of course, on the archives at eisenandj.org/real-talk. Partner, how are you, and how you been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Enjoying the wonderful weather. Went to a fundraiser for two awesome Republicans in Gloucester County for County Commissioner Chris Conowell and Nick DeSilvio yesterday. Okay. So it was really great to support some really dynamic, great Republicans. You know, I think Mr. DeSilvio has criticized us a little bit in the past on in the comments. But it was great to chat with him and still support him. And, you know, Chris Conowell, I have to say, is someone that's super dynamic and someone to watch for. Certainly huge potential and a big political future there.
Well, again, it is primary weekend. And before we get started here, we have a good list of topics to examine tonight. But let me just say this, because I know you have a lot to say. But let me start off by saying that, you know, for our audience that wasn't aware, originally the big plan for tonight was to try to convince all four Republican gubernatorial candidates to come on this show. And ultimately, Maria and I would have been moderating a debate. Obviously, we know it was only one debate between Jack Ciattarelli and perpetual and ongoing campaigner Hersh Singh. That didn't go very well. That looked about as much of a cluster blank as you can imagine. And it's disappointing. And I'm going to be honest with you right now. And I don't care who this annoys or pisses off at the NJGOP or any of the four campaigns. But, you know, I tried incessantly reaching out to all the campaigns. I mean, Brian Levine was a gentleman. He got back to me. He said he'd be down if we hosted one. Phil Rizzo got back to me. Hersh Singh, you know, I called him multiple times. And he was about as non-existent as like multiple Super Bowls for the Eagles, you know, in their trophy case. You know what I'm saying? And Jack Ciattarelli, again, I talked to one of these people. And again, I sort of got the sort of like, you know, the jib jab, whatever. Oh, I love your show. I watch you on Mondays. Yeah, right. And you and Maria doing great things. I'll get back to you. And mind you, when I was in Florida this past week, yeah, I was relaxing, but it was a bit of a working vacation because I was still making calls, still trying to navigate to see what we could do. And I don't know about you, Maria. I'm disappointed that we could not get these four grown men to agree to a debate where you and I would moderate and we'd be fair, we'd be just, we'd be tough, but we would want to ask the questions. I'm disappointed.
You know, I'm certainly disappointed too, because we weren't the only ones. The Rebovich Institute reached out to all the candidates and of course was interested in having me moderate. They reached out to them numerous times via Twitter, via phone call, as well, to get them to all debate. I think that when you have a primary, you have 4 candidates. The people deserve to hear what they all have to say. They deserve to have the opportunity to really see them answer those questions that is on everyone's mind that's voting in the Republican Party. And I think they were really deprived of that opportunity. And I get it. Some of these candidates are like, well, I don't want to give more time to a candidate that I don't think is deserving, or it may be a strategy if it is competitive. I don't want to debate and give them more of a platform than they already have. But you know what, like at least Donald Trump, for a bunch of Republicans that try and attach themselves to Donald Trump, at least he had some, kahunas and would get out there and say, listen, I'll debate anybody. He would go out there prepared or not. And sometimes I don't think he was really prepared, but he would still get out there. He would still stand up. He would still talk, maybe talk over you, whatever. But you know what? You have to admire and respect that kind of confidence. And, there was certainly a self-confidence in himself as a candidate to say, prepared or not, I don't care, bring it on. And these candidates, don't have any of that. I mean, It was disappointing.
No, it was. And again, I understand that Jack is the perennial front runner. He has all the endorsements from all the county committees, so the establishment Republican Party. I get all that. And I understand that based on the ELEC requirements, there were 2 debates, only one was held. And it just felt like it was like pulling teeth to get all 4 even to respond to a debate. And listen, come Wednesday morning, regardless of what the result is, and I'll sort of ask you for your prediction in a moment, but I'm going to really hammer the nominee and say, listen, you need to do more media, because right now, and we're going to get to a poll about Governor Murphy and obviously the presumptive Republican nominee, but right now it's June. And when we started this show, you and I said, hey, Jack needs to get the ball rolling. There's no interest, there's no enthusiasm. That was March, partner. We're just this early June, and still this is a very uninspiring Republican field. I'm sorry, I don't care who this annoys, but it's the truth. And now it just seems like, my prediction, I think Jack gets about 51% of the vote. Believe it or not, I think Phil Rizzo comes in, not a close second, but somewhere between maybe 9 to 10 percentage points. That's my prediction. What do you think?
Those are some interesting predictions. So, I think the other candidates are probably going to be a little more competitive than people are assuming. That I'm going to have to agree with. And just another thing, before I get to my predictions, if you really believe that you are the best candidate, you really believe that you are the winner, that you're going to be the front runner. If you believe in yourself, then why not get in front of a stage and talk to us about your vision and why you're the best leader compared to the other candidates. And I always think it's just disappointing when you don't do it. I've been in a non-competitive primary, and I didn't dismiss these other candidates. I didn't say, well, why give them time? I was very confident in myself and my ability, and I got up there and I debated. And so that being said, interesting. So this weekend, Memorial Day, there was one person that had their birthday party earlier in the weekend. I believe it was Saturday evening, and it was in Hamilton in South Jersey. So a bunch of South Jersey conservative, some of them were bikers and everything. And we started getting on the topic of politics, mostly because some of them there, they watch the show, they know me, and they were like, all right, so who is your pick for, Republican governor for the primary? Who do you like? And so we all started getting in a conversation about the candidates. And I have to say, I was very surprised in South Jersey, the majority of people that were part of that conversation, and it wasn't like 2 people, it was a large group. The majority of people in that conversation supported Rizzo. So I thought that was interesting. They do lean a little more conservative, but I think, it's kind of validating your point that, whether even if Jack is a front runner, that some of these candidates are probably a little more competitive than they think. So I think that Jack, because he has that support, that infrastructure, will pull ahead, but I don't know. I think maybe the other candidates might be a little closer than we think.
I mean, we'll see Wednesday morning, but and you brought up a point in our previous shows where, there's a lot of rah with the pom-poms, right, about someone like Hirsch Singh and or Phil Rizzo, and maybe Brian Levine too. but that doesn't always translate to physical votes and people getting up on Tuesday where it's in-person voting once again. So I'm always concerned about someone said, hey, did you check out like Rizzo's like tweet or his Instagram post? It had like 5,000 views. I'm like, okay, well, is that going to translate to 5,000 votes on Tuesday between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m.?
Not. I just thought that this group was a group of people that get out and vote. So, these were engaged voters. So that's and down in South Jersey. So that's why I thought that was interesting. But no, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes. Yeah. If anything, Phil, we've said this in the past, Phil Rizzo and Hirsch Singh may cancel each other out in terms of votes because they're both pulling from that conservative group within the Republican Party. But again, I mean, it looks like Jack is going to be the front runner. But regardless of who wins, I think the most important thing is the general election.
And speaking of the general election, obviously reported this week, and we'll get to some topics right now, via the New Jersey Globe and Uncle Dave this week. Reporting that the governor has an 11-point lead at a margin of 44% to 33%. And a quick note to everybody, Governor Murphy will be up here in Hudson County tomorrow from 12 to 4 with State Senator Brian Stack. So I'm going to go bother the governor tomorrow, Maria, be like, hey, listen, are you going to come on my show and the former Assemblywoman and my show as well? Like, what's up, Governor Murphy? I'm going to try to fight through that crowd and get to talk to the governor, and see, how receptive he is, because he's a nice guy. I mean, I've talked to him on other occasions, and he's very personable, but we'll see if I can sort of fight through the wall of operatives that I'm sure will be surrounding him tomorrow. But getting back to Uncle Dave, he reported this week that via Project Ready, a poll has him up by 11 points over presumptive Republican frontrunner Jack Ciattarelli. And it seems like, the poll was using mostly New Jersey residents, not registered voters, and not likely general election voters. So that was kind of, a weird sample size, where Uncle Dave reports that Murphy got 88% of Democrats, while Ciattarelli only got 68% of Republicans. And among New Jersey residents who consider themselves independents, Murphy leads Ciattarelli 37 to 21. Some interesting numbers there, looking at independents, because again, 4 years ago, 3.5 million people stayed home. And again, then candidate Phil Murphy only beat Kim Godano by a little over 300,000 votes. That's a razor slim margin. And again, I think that for people that were just unhappy with that race, guess what? Over 3 million people stayed home. Jack can't afford that. He just cannot do that come November.
Absolutely. I think comparing last gubernatorial race to this one is a little different because yes, sure. Governor Murphy did not get basically a ton of, of votes compared to the voter base. But, now that was when he was relatively unknown. If anything, even before the primary, he basically came out of nowhere. He was somebody that nobody expected would be the candidate for the Democrat candidate for governor. But he kind of came out of nowhere. Since then, he certainly made a name for himself, whether it's positive or negative. So there's certainly more name recognition there. People know who he is. We've had a whole pandemic. And I think that that's certainly changed a lot of people's views, again, whether it's positive or negative. But with Ciattarelli, I think the thing about this poll that we have to recognize, which is why I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to take it that seriously, is one, Republicans, they're hearing his name, but the primary hasn't happened yet. So there may be Republicans that are saying, well, they don't support Jack because they're supporting these other candidates. But after the primary, that may change. They may support Jack just because, out of spite for our current governor. So I don't, prior to the primary being over and knowing who the candidate is, I wouldn't take it too seriously, especially because once we know who the candidate is, and if it is Jack Ciattarelli, then he has time to really make a name for himself compared to Governor Murphy. This is after the primary. That's when the game really begins. And if he really hits the ground running more so than he has previously, and, ramps up campaign efforts, ramps up, whether getting out the vote, grassroots efforts, getting his name ID upped, I think then it's going to make a huge difference. So while it's probably not the most positive poll for Republicans, and I think Republicans do really need to wake up in terms of their whole ground game and get out the vote game, I'm not going to take it that seriously, to be honest.
I'm with you. And even though 11% might seem like a lot, I mean, based on the overwhelming amount of registrations that Democrats are far ahead of Republicans in the state overall. And we'll talk about some recent registrations in a moment. But, you would think that based on how many Democratic, incumbents and machine right people in New Jersey are firmly behind Governor Murphy. Remember, he has no primary challenger, right? 4 years ago, we thought, maybe Senate President Steve Sweeney might challenge him. Well, that's not the case. Governor Murphy's at the top of the ticket. He's got no opposition. He might have some write-in people that maybe aren't happy. But at the end of the day, I think this is a promising poll because based on what the governor has been alleging, right, in terms of his effectiveness as a governor during this pandemic and obviously county chairs and county machines, you would think that Governor Murphy will be polling, I would argue, by 20 points or more. I think the fact that it's at 11%, again, not so much the policy nerd in me, but then I sort of factor in the margin of error, that's about 2%. So it's really 9. I think that's a little of a scary margin for Governor Murphy because, again, if he's been as effective as he says he's been, right, and we're seeing establishment Democrats, whether it be U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, Cory Booker, whether it be Craig Coughlin, whether it be John Kerry, everyone seems to be really solid behind the governor. Oh my God, he's done a great job during this pandemic in getting, obviously today, for example, obviously all mask mandates are off. It seems like the state will be fully reopened today. Maybe, 3 or 4 months too late, according to a lot of people. Guess what? 9 percentage points doesn't seem like a lot. So I'd be worried if I was the governor. I mean, I'll ask him that when we get him on the show. But again, whether or not he answers the question, I don't know. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think right now it's a really early poll. So yes, I think there's a lot of negative to draw from it, but I think the positive is that considering the format of the poll, the methodology and everything, it's a poll that's kind of easily dismissed.
I agree.
It sounds terrible, but
I agree. And like I said, everyone at home, stay tuned. I'm going to do my best to approach the governor tomorrow, and of course, State Senator Stack, and try to convince him to come on the show, and we'll see obviously if the governor will oblige.
And maybe we can get one of these Republicans, depending on which is the candidate, get them on our show as well.
I agree because you know what, Republicans aren't going to get a fair shake media-wise. NJTV is not going to give them any airtime, and PBS NJ is not going to give them any airtime. Maybe 101.5 FM, but again, and I'm just sort of speaking individually too, in addition to our own project partner, like Eisen NJ is a respectable, growing news entity in New Jersey. It's not the aforementioned, but it's growing. So it would behoove the nominee, whoever it's going to be, Wednesday morning at 9:01 a.m., whatever, to take you and I seriously and take Eisen NJ seriously because they need all the coverage they can get. They know they're behind the 8 ball.
I think they should take us seriously because I've been all over the state and I get people that are saying, I love your show. So they, and both sides of the aisle. So maybe, it's something that's growing considering we put this much investment and effort. We put a lot of effort into being informed, and that's something that we do all the time, but we put like that much effort, but it's getting a groundswell and it's growing. So
it is. Absolutely. So we'll see. It is primary weekend, and obviously a story out of Edison, New Jersey, down in Middlesex County. Now, again, shout out to Uncle Dave with the New Jersey Globe for his story on this. And it seems as if an Edison school board member running for state senate wants mandatory psych tests for teachers. So for our audience maybe isn't aware, Moheen Patel is challenging digging on the ticket with Edison mayoral candidate Mahesh Bhagia. So a controversial Edison school board member that's running for the state senate in this week's Democratic primary is calling for public school teachers to undergo periodic and regular psychological testing and has alleged that some educators are racist. Now, Moheen Patel is challenging incumbent Patrick Deegan as part of a ticket essentially led by Edison mayoral candidate Mahesh Bhagia, the Democratic municipal chairman. Now, he went on to say this week, Maria, quote, all the teachers should have yearly assessments along with competency tests conducted on the subject matter that they teach. Just like every other licensed professional that needs to be renewed and course credits taken, so should teachers. Patel wrote in a WhatsApp group, quote, they should also be psychologically evaluated as well. Patel also claimed that some students have told him, quote, that some of the teachers are racist and openly say racist things. Now, according to Patel, the Board of Education vice president, quote, is the biggest problem, and obviously what it is the teachers union. I read a little bit about this. I read about Moheen Patel, and, Maria, as someone who works in higher education, and I'm a teacher. At the end of the day, I know some of my colleagues will say, I'm not a teacher. I'm a professor. I'm an academic. I'm an intellectual. I'm still teaching. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not serving drinks. I'm not a bartender. I'm not walking dogs. I'm not a professional dog walker. I'm teaching.
Hey, what's wrong with bartending? I occasionally bartend.
No, that's fine. But again, if you're bartending, you're serving drinks, right? You're of service. You're of hospitality. If you are a professional,
I'm a therapist. I'm a therapist.
Yeah,
I'm a divorce lawyer. I keep people's secrets.
Oh, absolutely.
Their girlfriend and their wife.
No,
I give financial advice, political advice. I am a top advisor. But but back to, and not to minimize either profession, but yes, you are a teacher as well.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I'm teaching. Now, would that be great for some of my colleagues, my crazy liberal, socially justice crusaders and woke people in my department or in academia? Yeah, I'd like to see some psych tests on some of my colleagues. But is this really like, I'm not trying to make it a laughing matter, but is this guy onto something? Or, I mean, aside from the logistics of it, like the teachers union maybe objecting to it, collective bargaining issues, is this is he onto something?
You know, I actually am not against competency tests. I mean, I think with that profession, you know, there should be some level of competency. And I think that when you've reached a certain time, tenure and everything, there is a level of complacency that has to end. I think that could be the case with many professions. And I mean, it is a very true statement to say that many professions do have to renew their license, do continuing education, improve it. And I think that is something that's important. As far as psych evaluations, you know what, honestly, if the purpose is only to determine, you know, discrimination and bias, I'm not sure that that's something that's necessarily I'm just not sure it's going to get through, but I don't think there's anything wrong with checking someone's psychological competency as well. I mean, there are many professions that do want people to have some sort of psych test and some sort of mental evaluation
regularly.
But I'm really not. I think not knowing the details, it's really hard to say. I mean, what exactly. Sure. Not knowing what exactly that would entail and the complete purpose, because right now the only purpose is, from my understanding, is determining whether someone is racist or not. Obviously, we don't want people in a profession that has that kind of extreme bias either way. So, especially depending on the school district and everything. But I certainly support competency tests, 100%. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I'm with you. Listen, as someone who works in education, I mean, I see it firsthand with fellow academics who, listen, at the end of the day, for example, like what sort of links us all together is just, we're all PhDs, right? And that's it. And, compared to I'll always say real teachers, like kindergarten teachers, like second grade teachers, like middle school teachers, like those are real teachers, Maria. Like when you go to grad school, and maybe people aren't aware of this, like there's no certification that I'm taking during graduate school that enables me to be an instructor. Like simply having a PhD in the eyes of academia is, oh, you're good enough to teach. When we all know that we've had tons of professors that can't teach a lick, that are incoherent, that are just speaking gibberish. And again, because they have advanced degrees, that's all you need to teach. That's not the case in high schools and middle schools and elementary schools. I mean, I have tons of friends, as I'm sure you do too, that go through the DOE in Trenton. There are multiple certifications. There are tons of different, degrees. It's not just, oh, I'm going to get, a bachelor's degree in English and I can go teach English in high school. No, I mean, you have to go through and take education courses, and it's laborious, it's exhausting, and that's what, when I say real teachers, those are real teachers.
I was an instructor in the dental field, and I would teach dental assisting way back when. And during that time, I mean, even to keep my license, I had to do constant continuing education, even though we had a specific curriculum to follow. It was still important for them to be prepared in real life. So I had to be prepared. I had to be aware and educate myself on new technology, new techniques, so that when they were out in the workforce, they weren't just prepared to take their exams for their dental x-ray license, for their CDA, their RDA, all of that stuff. I didn't want to just prepare them for that test. I want to prepare them to be excellent assistants, real time, hands-on, and, that it was also applied. So, yeah, I mean, again, when you're an instructor, when you're a teacher, whatever subject matter that you're teaching. And I would say a majority of teachers do very much take it seriously, do educate themselves, ensure that they're competent. But, you know, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that idea. Obviously, the devil's in the details with anything. And so, and as well as how it would be implemented. But I think it's an interesting idea.
I agree
I'm
with
not
you.
so sure about the psychological competency one. Just because, again, I think considering the purpose of what he said, you know, I'm not sure how that would be implemented or how that would be determined.
I agree. And you just said it best. The devil is in the details. And obviously, it's a very polarizing race down there in Middlesex County for the state Senate race. Obviously, it's very, very, you know, feisty and fickle as we see. I mean, again, there are some hurdles that, again, I'm not an attorney, but just knowing what I know, I mean, there'll be some hurdles with the teachers union, collective bargaining issues, how that's worked into the next contract, who's administering the test, is it the DOE, is it an outside agency? So there's a lot of details in there that we have to sort out. But again, it's something that was interesting. It raised a lot of eyebrows, not just in Middlesex County, but because this guy's running for a state Senate seat on the Democratic side. So that's something. I mean, we'll definitely keep an eye on it and see what happens in that race. But sticking to state Senate races, let's move up north a little bit to Bergen County. And reported this week by my good friend Fred Snowflack at Insider NJ. Apparently in LD 37, it seems like there's a big divide there. I mean, Gordon Johnson this week very flatly said, quote, Governor Murphy supports me, and that's all that matters. Now, again, for our viewers at home, now Gordon Johnson claimed this on Wednesday night near the end of his League of Women Voters debate with fellow Assembly member Valerie Huddle. Now, it was a little bit out of context in terms of what he said, according to a lot of sources. However, more to the point, though, it quickly demonstrated the parameters of the Johnson-Huddle primary to replace now retiring state senator and majority leader Loretta Weinberg, and again in the heavily Democratic district in 37 in Bergen County. Now Johnson as the governor and Weinberg herself and various other power brokers on his side. However, Huddle says in various reports this week that she's more than capable of thinking for herself, and what's more, the way that she initiates legislation. Now, a few hours before the debate, Huddle released a sharply worded statement criticizing legislative leaders for delaying, for example, passage of the Reproductive Freedom Act, which, among other things, aims to protect abortion rights in the state if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade. Side note, I don't think that's going to happen, even with this conservative Supreme Court, but that's a topic for another day. But sticking to this race, it's been fickle. It has been just contentious. And I'll tell you something right now, I'm really looking forward to about 10:05, 10:30 p.m. Tuesday night to see what happens in LD 37, partner.
Absolutely. That's a race that we've discussed in the past on our show. And that's going to be a very close race, in my opinion. You know, he may have a lot of support when it comes to the power brokers, but she is certainly building a groundswell of support, grassroots, a lot of different organizations that are probably really important in that district, which is a very Democrat liberal district, are really supporting her. And so this is going to be an interesting race. These two people are very much competing for everyone's vote and are both working hard. You know, I've worked with them both in the legislature. I was on budget committee with Assemblyman Johnson, and I, you know, worked with Assemblywoman Valerie Huddle. And I have to say, you know, they're both two people that I highly respect, that were wonderful to work with. And, you know, I have nothing negative to say about them, but I mean, she's certainly working very hard to get that vote. I believe of the two is probably the more progressive candidate. And it's something that is maybe important in that district. And she's highlighting it very much. And she is getting a lot of endorsements and support as well. So I certainly think it's going to be very, very close.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And again, just sort of mentioning the reference that the governor will be up here in North Jersey. He'll be up here in Hudson County once again to rally for State Senator Stack, who's running unopposed. But I've also been hearing that he'll be going to LD 37 to really campaign for Gordon Johnson. And again, I don't want to make a lot out of this, but this could be a really good litmus test, though, Maria, because the governor's put a lot of stock behind Gordon Johnson. And it just seems like, again, no disrespect to Huddle, but a lot of establishment Dems in Bergen County, along with the governor, along with John Curry, have been really behind, Gordon Johnson. This could be a little bit of a temperature taking Tuesday in terms of how they feel in that district. Because at the end of the day, if the governor's endorsing you, there's pressure on you. Like, you expect to sort of have the governor, if you can ride the governor's coattails, because again, he's the top of the ticket. He doesn't have a primary challenger. You would think, or at least theoretically, that riding his coattails is going to be beneficial to Gordon Johnson. I'm hearing that race is probably going to be not decided Tuesday night. That's what I'm hearing. What do you hear?
That's the same thing I'm hearing. That is the same thing I'm hearing, that it is going to be close. It's certainly an exciting race, and I've been watching it, and it's going to be close. There are a lot of races primary races that are very important for people to watch and pay attention to, especially if you live in that district.
Yeah, absolutely. And another primary race that's very, very interesting is down a little bit further south in Union County in LD20 between State Senator Joe Cryan and the current Assemblyman Jamal Holley. Now, for everyone at home, maybe I'm not sure if you missed it on Wednesday night, but it was a really good turnout traffic-wise in moderating a virtual town hall for Assemblyman Holley and his ticket, which included Assembly candidates Diane Murray Clements and Christian Veliz on his ticket in column B. And it was interesting because the Assemblyman started the virtual town hall with a video of Joe Cryan when Jamal Holley ran with him only just, I think, 2 years ago, where he said that, hey, if you want genuine leadership, that's why I have Jamal Holley on my team. I'm sort of paraphrasing. And he played that video right for the audience at the beginning of the Zoom. And there was a good amount of people in that Zoom lobby watching it live. And I said, wow, that was really smart to kind of take Cryan's own words and say, well, what's changed in 2 years?
A lot. A lot's changed in 2 years. Hey, what a difference a day makes.
Sure.
Obviously, I think that Jamal Holley was somebody that a lot of people were really excited about, that thought was really dynamic. I know you certainly have a different opinion. But, I have to say, when I was in the legislature with him, we were on housing committee together. I didn't see much of him. I was out in Colorado with the whole delegation that was to learn more about legalization. I saw him at one of the events, and that's when we toured one of the seat to sale facilities. Yeah. But for the most part, there wasn't much there in trying to engage in conversation about how he felt and what he thought about legalization. You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't think he was that informed. So, I think he was somebody that I was certainly excited about. I think he's a great person. I don't think he's a bad person. I'm not going to, I don't know Cryan well enough to determine who I would vote for, because I don't live there. So I certainly wasn't following that race in that sense. But I have to say, he was somebody that I think everybody was excited about when he first ran. And of course, there are a lot of people that are still excited, that live in that district, that believe that he does represent them. But, I don't know. I'm not that excited. If I lived there, I'd be like, I don't know.
Well, that district's really weird. it's 4 big towns. It's Elizabeth, it's Hillside, I believe it's Union, I believe it's also Roselle. Those are
and that's where he's from, if I'm correct, Roselle.
Yeah, and those are 4 pretty big municipalities in Union County. Absolutely. So I just think it's interesting, because I think what the Holley campaign is alleging is that Cryan's been like that establishment guy. He's been like that career politician in Union County, a guy that has just, sort of played the role like many other establishment politicians, not just Democrats, but Republicans too, right? And I think what he's trying to sort of, at least the message I got Wednesday night when I was pretty much quizzing all of them and asking them questions about their plan, reading comments from the audience, taking questions, whatever. It just seemed, I think what they're trying to convey is that Joe Cryan, and I've had him on my Insider NJ podcast, so I'm not going to totally throw Joe under the bus, but it seemed like what they're trying to articulate is that Joe Cryan now is out of touch. He's been there too long, and he's not really responsive to the needs of those 4 towns where, again, I'm not saying the race car was being played, but it seemed like it was like the old white guy that's been there forever that's out of touch with a growing Black and brown population in Elizabeth, Hillside, Union, and Roselle. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people.
But you know what? Jamal Holley isn't necessarily in touch as well. If anything, Joe Cryan can say the flip of, yes, I said you were a dynamic leader, but at the same time, you ran with me. You were under my wing. You weren't criticizing me before this. So, not until you wanted to run and you didn't gain the line. That's when all of a sudden I'm the bad guy. So the flip could be said. But I think, Jamel Holley, the thing is, this is somebody that, in my opinion, considering some of the things that I've seen on social media and some of the information that he's put out there, this is somebody that's in a way peddled misinformation. Mm-hmm. And I know, having an anti-vax stance is something that's very, obviously it's something that's very divisive. He was probably gaining a lot more support in communities outside of his district based on that anti-vaccination stance. But with the COVID vaccination, there has been a smaller percentage of people in the Black and brown community getting vaccinated compared to other communities. And that's something that's important to look at, because COVID itself is something that adversely affected the Black and brown community compared to other, to other ethnicities. And so I don't know. I think that's something that's important. If you want to talk about this person not necessarily being out of touch, how well in touch are you as well? I don't, I'm a Republican. So while I believe that representation matters and, that it's important. And I think it's great to have young, dynamic people, because some people, again, get old and complacent. I think it's really, at the end of the day, who's the most qualified and who is the best person for the position. And so, if he's saying that this person's out of touch and is the establishment candidate and has been terrible, why wasn't he running against him the first time around? Why did he decide to run against him when he got thrown off the line?
Yeah. Listen, it's a really interesting question, and it sort of leads me into the next topic I wanted.
We didn't have a problem with him when it came to the Black and brown community in that district until he wasn't on the line anymore.
That's a great point. That's a great point, partner. And speaking about being off the line, just breaking this afternoon, Assemblyman Majority Whip Nicholas Ciattarelli, who was thrown off the line in Hudson County in the 31st Legislative District, spoke with News 12 today on their popular show Power and Politics. It seems like he obviously stepped aside. He decided not to run off the line. He felt, he released a statement recently saying that, hey, with Governor Murphy at the top of the ticket, I don't want to do anything to disrupt the governor's momentum. I think he sort of took a gentleman's way out, and he bowed out gracefully. Again, I'm hearing words that it seems that if the governor can win re-election, that mayor in Bayonne, Jimmy Davis, who essentially kicked Ciattarelli off the line, is facing re-election in May of 2022. And it seems like there's some consolidation of hate between the governor, between U.S. Senator Robert Menendez, between Assembly Speaker Coughlin, between also John Curry, and also even, State Senate President Steve Sweeney, because it seems like the mayor of Bayonne took all their phone calls and said, well, thanks for calling, Governor. Thanks for calling, Senator. But I'm not changing my mind. And that's it. He didn't really say screw you, but that's sort of the inference there. And he's running a guy that obviously is going to win on Tuesday. And it seems like Ciattarelli once again took to the airwaves to sort of state his claim that, hey, maybe abolishing the line isn't a bad thing after all, and it's funny because he kind of used some quotes that I know he got from my show because I've talked about it, where he said,
listen, were they mine? Because I say it all the time too.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it just seems like this is a practice that has been hurting Democrats not lately, and now Republicans too.
Absolutely.
There's a court case that's still pending. We don't know what the update with that litigation is, but I wouldn't be surprised because it takes a legislative act, Maria, that I know of to remove this as a electoral apparatus. I don't know. It just seems like this is not going to die anytime soon.
It's not. I mean, I've talked about having more competitive primaries. It's something that we've discussed on the show numerous times. I am supportive of abolishing the line. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great to have party organization, support, infrastructure. It does help, but at the same time, it's not checked. And when it goes unchecked, you get power-hungry people that don't necessarily care about representation and doing the right thing. You know, people complain about how a lot of things aren't getting done in New Jersey. I mean, there are a lot of issues, just even nationally, let's be honest, there are a lot of issues that could have been resolved a long time ago. When we look at illegal immigration,
Right.
you know, these are issues that people in both parties don't necessarily want to resolve because they need to weaponize this issue in order to get reelected. And you see that, I mean, when we look at the fact that we have so much layers of government, the fact that, you know, on both sides of the aisle, people want to keep their little fiefdoms, don't want to consolidate, don't want to basically eliminate certain aspects of government. I mean, it's on both sides. And I think part of this is this county infrastructure, this county support, because they needed to get jobs, they needed to get money, they needed to get, you know, their lawyers in, their engineers in, and that's how they make money. And it's kind of, I mean, I think people miss that a lot. I mean, it's bad. I don't think it's great. And I think that also it's an opportunity to control candidates. You know, if a candidate is representing their district, but maybe not necessarily representing your self-interest and pockets, dump them off the line. And I think that's, you know, and to even Jamel Holly's offense, that may be something that happened. And so I'm in support of, if not necessarily eliminating, having more checks and balances when it comes to how this is done. And it is done. And how a candidate gets the line is done differently in different counties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also it sort of begs the bigger question about how much power do all 21 county chairs have from both parties? Because it's very different. Because case in point,
absolutely.
Here in Hudson County, Amy DeGee's a friend of mine. She's on my Hudson County podcast regularly. She's been on my Eyes on NJ program. But it seemed like, you know what, there seemed to be this sort of quiet whisper of like, let's not set the precedent where the county chair is going to start telling mayors what to do. And that seemed to be the case in Hudson, where in other counties, the county chair can just say, nope, I don't care what any mayor says in this county. I'm the county chair. I'm going to set the line. And it seemed like here in Hudson, again, every county's different, but it just seemed like the chair was not willing to do that. Now, again, maybe it's something in the bylaws. All 21 counties maybe are different. I haven't read all of them, so I'm not privy to that information, but it seemed that in Hudson where people were saying, hey, maybe the chair should step in and sort of squash this by one of the mayors. It seems, at least in Hudson, the mayors still exhibit an enormous amount of power and influence about who runs in legislative races, but that's not always the case in other counties, right? And I know that from both Republicans and Democrats too. Absolutely.
You know what? I don't know. I'm kind of just over it when it comes to county lines. I understand it, and it's so difficult, and it's so difficult to get qualified candidates. You know, I was on Activista Rise Up, Dr. Patricia Campos Medina's show, and there was a group of women. It was a panel. And it was talking about getting more candidates, women, minority candidates. And again, I know Republicans are out there like, I just care about who's the most qualified. I just want qualified candidates. Well, the reality is there's a lot of, you know, some of these women that are out there are more qualified than the men that are representing you now. You know, if you're looking for the most qualified candidates, then, you know, the reality is the county party organizational structure, this power structure that's there, is really a barrier to having qualified candidates. You know, you really have to take the time to really network, to you know, gain that support. It is not something that's, you know, an easy task. It certainly takes time and investment, or certain relationship building. And so building those, and it's great for networking. It's great to build relationships. Don't get me wrong. But again, we're talking about that kind of more negative on steroids aspect. Some counties are great. Some are really fair, but those that go unchecked. And so it's always whoever they preordain. It's always whomever they pick. It's always their pal. And that really does, if you care about the most qualified candidates, then you should be looking more at how counties are selecting candidates. Because I can tell you what, there are a lot of people in your county or your town, your district, that are probably 10 times more qualified to be in that position and would be a better representative and leader in your district than what you have there because of how this whole structure works. So I think it is something to look at. It's something, again, it's gone unchecked. It's not consistent. You know, there are really bad actors out there that are using it for power grabs as opposed to the whole purpose of government, which is, you know, essentially to represent you and to ensure that your life is better, not the other way around.
Fair enough. And speaking of what is consistent, and a shout out to Uncle Dave once again with the New Jersey Globe for this story. You know, New Jersey adds over 211,000 more Democrats and only 117,000 Republicans since the 2020 primary. Now, again, here's some numbers here for our audience at home. New Jersey saw some minor changes since the May 18th voter registration deadline, adding 1,500 new voters during the last 13 days of the month, according to the New Jersey Division of Elections. Now, while the deadline to vote in the June 8th primary has passed, new voters are permitted to register for future elections. Now, through the end of May, New Jersey added 579 Democrats and 228 Republicans and 743 unaffiliated voters. Now, the state now has 1,089,844 more Democrats than Republicans and 120,752 more unaffiliated, like people like me, something referred to as independents, than Democrats. Since the 2020 primary, New Jersey has added 357,000 plus new voters, once again, 210,000 plus Democrats and 116,000 plus Republicans. You know, Maria, I'll tell you, partner, I look at these numbers. I don't want to say it spells doom for Republicans, but again, it's a reminder that independents oftentimes are the difference in elections. And I think coming up Tuesday, well, Tuesday's a primary election, so obviously it's not relevant, but coming up in the fall, you know, whether it's the gubernatorial race, whether it's legislative races, or even, listen, up here in Hudson County, even though Jersey City is a nonpartisan municipal race, guess what? You know, people vote according to their party. And guess what? That makes a difference with registrations. And I just think that, once again, this is another black eye to the NJGOP, who we continually piss off on this program, which I'm almost like kind of happy we do. It's like a rite of passage every 2 weeks. Like, oh, what can I make fun of concerning the NJGOP? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but the point is that it's another black eye for them, because during a political climate where there are pockets of the state that are unhappy with Governor Murphy and mask mandates and how long the state's been shut down and whether or not our kids can go back to school in September, whether they're wearing masks, whatever. It just seems you would think that with that much disenchantment, it would galvanize the NJGOP to get more people registered. And I'm sorry, looking at these numbers, we're talking about almost 1.1 million more Democrats. That's a big mountain to climb for Republicans. And that's not changing anytime soon.
It's a huge mountain to climb. And I think that, you know, and it's not that, you know, for example, my district, when I was in elected office with the 8th legislative district, we were out registered. There were more Democrats than Republicans in terms of voter registration, and we won consistently. You know, we've discussed this before, the rule of thirds. You know, you got to get your third on your side. You know, the other side's got to get their third on the other side, but the third in the middle that's who wins the race, is the people that can get the third in the middle. There's certainly soft Democrats that are unhappy with Phil Murphy that may go to a Republican that ideas and vision speaks to them more. There are Democrats that are unhappy with how Phil Murphy handled the pandemic. And so there's certainly an opportunity there. Yes, it certainly doesn't bode well. And you know, again, what's the point in having county party organization if, you know, we talk about the NJGOP, but the counties are also supposed to be that layer that are on the ground, that are supposed to really support their candidates and get out the vote. And I've had people that are running for office reach out to me for advice because they have no support. They feel like they're not getting support. It's just like they're in a district that maybe is, you know, seems heavy down, you know, and I look at their district and I'm like, these are districts that when I was in office, you know, the term before, they were Republican. They were close. These districts used to be more competitive. And I think the reality is it's not just the NJGOP, it's the county organizations as well. They're not looking at the long term. There's no long-term strategy, no long-term vision, no long game. You know, I talk about the comparison with Senator Gopal and Senator Testa. You know, Senator Testa turned to District Red, which was amazing, but it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't because Doug Steinhardt, and I know he tries to take a lot of credit. Sorry, Doug, I think you're an awesome guy, but it wasn't because of you. There was a long-term strategy there. There was an investment. There was an investment in towns that weren't always Republican, because maybe you're not going to win the town, but you can mitigate that Democrat vote and you can get more voters to your side, which would help in your overall race. You know, there was a strong investment over time. And same with Senator Gopal in Monmouth. The district used to be Senator Beck, Assemblywoman Angelini, and Assemblywoman Casagrande. And it took time. They were slowly picking away at that district. They had a long-term game and strategy to flip those districts. And so with the NJGOP and the county Republican organization, but they're not doing anything. And keep in mind, everybody thought that like Senator Gopal, everybody thought that was always going to be a Republican stronghold, but they took the time to invest. Yep. You know, there are other districts in New Jersey that seem like Democrat strongholds that we don't even try. We don't even go in and touch. But you may not win it today. You may not win it next time, but you're not even investing. You're not even investing in your own Republican candidates. You're just basically raising money to hold on to what little you have left. And that's not how you win races. That's not how you gain a majority in the legislature. Okay. And you don't also do it just from the top down. You know, we have this one great candidate, so that means it's going to flow all the way down. No, it has to be on the ground in your area. Everybody has to work together. And you're right. I mean, hey, I don't care if they get upset, but you know, what's that doing you? It's certainly not winning you seats. So they can get upset all they want, but they really need to take an internal self-assessment as to what they're doing and start really doing more, because, you know, right now they're just losing district after district. They're losing their voter base, and it's not looking good. They need to start really getting out of their comfort zone.
I agree with you.
Different districts, not just keeping their own districts that are Republican, but also investing in other areas, other towns, other counties, and growing the party.
I'm with you completely. I think you hit it out of the ballpark with that. Maria, before we close up for the night here, just reported this afternoon on Insider NJ, State Senate President Steve Sweeney intimating that possibly a shutdown could happen. For our viewers at home that maybe are not aware, under the parameters of the state constitution here in New Jersey, a budget has to be signed before 11:59 a.m. on June the 30th. And if it's not at 12:01 a.m. July 1st, then the state would subsequently shut down. Now, again, for our audience, maybe they're not aware of that, since they're always so used to, you know, budget showdowns in Washington. That's not the case here in New Jersey. That has to happen. Otherwise, the state will shut down. We've seen that in recent years. We saw it in 2006 with then Governor John Corzine. And then, of course, we saw it in 2016 with Governor Chris Christie. I think this is the worst thing that Governor Phil Murphy needs in a re-election year, that both the Assembly and the Senate can't come to agreement on the budget. And listen, it's ballooned up again like a fat kid in a bakery. And I'm sorry, it's, you know, we could talk for hours about the fiscal irresponsibility in Trenton, but I thought that was very telling for Steve Sweeney just to sort of leak that when maybe he didn't have to say that publicly.
Well, you know, Senator Sweeney is always at odds with who's ever in power, you know. But I think maybe that's a good thing. It's a good thing to have checks and balances within your own party. Kind of keeps you straight. But, you know, obviously that's something that Governor Murphy doesn't want. I was there when I was in office at the time. I was on budget committee when Governor Chris Christie had the state shut down, and we all remember him in that beach chair.
The lawn chair, yeah. He was like, you know, the lawn chair, yeah.
It was a shame because at the time when that happened, and here everybody has to understand, you really have to be careful when it comes to this stuff, because perception is reality. And what people don't know is internally at the time, Governor Christie actually had the upper hand. Before that picture on the beach, he had the upper hand, and it looked like he was going to get his way. But public perception of him being on the beach while everybody else, and keep in mind, your local beaches were open. It was just state-run beaches, which are few and far between. Those were the ones that were closed. But him being on the beach in that moment just looked bad, and it hurt his capacity to continue to negotiate further. And, so that was an interesting time. It was not fun. I still showed up to Trenton every day and made sure that I was working hard, but, it was empty. It was constant, power struggle behind the scenes. And that's not something that's good for the people of New Jersey. So, and that's not something that's going to look good for Governor Murphy if that does happen. So he's certainly going to need to flex some muscles and exercise some leadership and compromise a bit. You can't have everything. I know we're the Garden State, but we don't have money growing trees. So,
Really?
he's going to have to compromise in order to have any success in the general election.
I agree with you. And just a special a correction here for our audience. It was July 2017, not 2016, because he was too busy running for president during that primary. So it was 2017. My apologies to the audience there. I thought it was really interesting, though, partner, that Sweeney, even though it seems like his relationship with the governor has been smoothed out for some time now, to even leak that was interesting, because I'm sure that didn't make the governor very comfortable, knowing that, June 30th is almost here. And I know it's June 4th, whatever, but it's something to keep an eye on for, because it just seems like the budget continues to balloon up. We borrowed last year. It just seems that, and listen, last night on my Insider NJ podcast, I had State Assemblyman Brian Bergen on, and he pretty much was like, I know how frustrating this is. I feel powerless, along with my Republican, assembly mates and also the Republican state senators, where Democrats can just sort of shove down a budget. And because they have absolute control of both chambers, Republicans are powerless. I could hear the despair in his voice. I could hear the despair in other Republicans that I've interviewed, like Assemblyman DePhillips, Assemblyman Rooney, State Senator Testa, as well as Bucco and Panaccio in recent months. It just seems like this is something that it may not be like a budget showdown, but it'll be interesting coming up for June 30th. Maria,
I think it's a good thing, actually, because, at the end of the day, real quick, while a lot of Republicans perceive Democrats to be completely financially irresponsible, not all of them are that irresponsible or completely reckless. But they may not even fall on the level of reckless. They understand that we still need to operate as a state, and there comes a limit to what we can spend compared to what we're bringing in. And so I think it is a good thing that he leaked it, because, it's sending that smoke signal of, hey, can't have everything. We're going to have to negotiate here.
I agree. Maria, before we close it up tonight here, real quick here, what are you looking forward to primary night? We talked about it a little bit more, but is there something else we haven't touched upon tonight that you're looking forward to coming up on primary night?
I am looking forward to seeing Assemblywoman Betty Lou DeCroce win. Again, this is someone that I support immensely and is absolutely the best candidate, top vote getter. I've repeated it so many times. I am looking forward to seeing her win. I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of some of these super competitive races. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens with Assemblywoman DeMaso. That was an interesting turn of events, and she has a primary there. So I'm interested to see what happens there. And obviously, I'm very interested in seeing who our gubernatorial candidate will be for the Republican Party, and how the other candidates performed.
I'm with you. And let me just piggyback on that. Listen, this is Jack's race to lose. And Jack's been working at this for 3 years. He's collected a lot of endorsements. And the reason I said 51%, and I'm being a little conservative, Jack needs to win this in a romp, because if he doesn't, I think it's a mandate on Jack that he's still not resonating, not just with Republicans, but independents, which he really, really needs coming up in the general election. So, folks, we'll leave it right there. We will return 2 weeks from tonight during Father's Day weekend on Friday night, June the 18th. So you definitely want to mark it on your calendars.
And I will be in Puerto Rico, so I will be filming from PR.
All right. Well, obviously, that's a great thing about technology. We can do it virtually from anywhere in the globe. So Maria will be in her homeland. I'll be here in Jersey, sweating my rear end off, as they say here, with the humid days ahead of us. Folks, she is New Jersey's premier advocate, Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist, Fernando Uribe, saying thank you so much for watching the latest edition of Talking Jersey with Maria and Fernando. We'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. In the meantime, again, stay healthy, stay safe, And we'll see you again soon here on StreamYard and also on Facebook Live.